Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream, we work on Django apps. We build stuff for the web. We are working on a project that I've been building to get something out and make it accessible to users. You're welcome to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. And tonight we're going to continue, or I guess whenever you're watching this, but on the stream actively, we're going to continue on this project of integrating Stripe into this app. So I'm building a journaling app, and it does email journaling. So it sends out prompts via email, and you get the opportunity to respond via email, and it goes into your journal. And the unique hook about it is that each prompt is sent with a previous journal entry to remind you of what you wrote in the past. So that's the cool thing about it. It's a service that I've used a similar service like it for years. And I am replicating this because I had some reliability with the issues with the service that I was using. So we've got the core of the app going, and we're working on getting Stripe integrated so that someone, in theory, could sign up and eventually pay for the service. That's the goal, is to get this app operational so that folks can use it. So we've done some basic setup in the last couple of streams to get some of this going. Last time we had to work on some template changes to actually prepare this because we didn't even have the basics in place because everything we were doing was related to the core functionality of the site. So tonight, I think we're actually ready to get into the heart of what it takes to get this going with Stripe. And we've got some examples to follow. We've got a process that we've listed out here. So I think we have everything that we need to actually continue. And I set myself up here so I wouldn't forget of what to do. So our job is to follow this bullet here, which says that when a user clicks the call to action, which will be a button that says, well, let's find out what it says. We wrote that part. No, I don't want to install iTerm now. We wrote that part, and it says what? I put it somewhere. There it is. Activate your account. So that's the thing that we want to make possible, and the ultimate objective of this is when the user clicks activate their account, it's going to take them to a Stripe specific page. On that page, so this is the notion of creating a session on the Stripe side, and once they are on this page and they sign up with Stripe, they will get returned back, and if they paid and truly activated their account, Stripe on their side will send a call to our webhook, and our webhook will activate their account and make it into an active status. If they did not do that, then it will go to an error page that'll be like, hey, no big deal, you're not ready, that's fine. So our goal is to make this button that exists right here do something, and I think that's where we're at. And wow, okay, not a good start. So something seems to have changed about my system. I don't think I installed anything. Bizarre. All right, let's take a break and fix this. So something about Heroku did not work. We're using a tool called Heroku Local, which if you have worked in Ruby before, there's a tool called Foreman, which allows you to run multiple processes at the same time. Heroku follows suit with that, and it uses a special file called a proc file to do that. Heroku built that tool into their own tooling because it was such a common pattern of using a proc file. Proc file is their file format for how to make multiple things run on their apps. And since my app is being deployed to Heroku, we're using that proc file style. So we had this Heroku local command, and weirdly, the Heroku client seems to have disappeared on me. I don't know why. All right, before I get too deep in this, let's just try opening a new tab. Maybe there was some update on my Mac here that I was not aware of. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. So let's try it here. Nope, it's just gone. That's so strange because I have literally not been on this computer since I last streamed. So this was I guess a background update, which kind of sucks. All right, so let's look at our brew history, or let's just look grep through the history and see if we have a brew command that installs Heroku. Because all I'm going to do is try and reinstall this. So we've added the brew tap, the Heroku tap. And so we should be able to do a brew install on Heroku. Sorry, y'all, I didn't anticipate doing this. I was just hoping to get right to it. And here we are. This is the reality of programming. Sometimes you have weird environment stuff that happens. Very strange. Just like gone. All right, well, maybe it's fine. Maybe brew just did an update or something under the cover somehow. Also strange, because like brew doesn't update by itself, so I don't know what happened. We'll take a moment here, let this get going. While that's going, maybe we can look at the actual activity that we need to do. So we've got this link to this view. Do I still have it up? This was the template for that view. And I believe this was the view itself. Yeah, it was a class-based view, and it was adding some context to a template, including a Stripe public key, a couple of URLs, and then some data that it was going to add to various bits. And then we could see how that was used in the template to set that Stripe public key, set the checkout a session ID. That was the other thing that was kind of hiding down here, is this session thing. I talked about how this is a weird structure for calling this session thing twice with the exception case, and then it was passing that session ID into the context as well. So we need to do some similar stuff because I think the session ID is something that we have to build on our side. So we want to, well, let me think about this. When does this view get called? Because I don't want, remember, well, maybe you don't remember. If you've never joined before, I'm having the index page. Sorry, I'm thinking through this. The index page on my site is going to be doing multiple jobs. One of them is to be the place to do the actual sign up and activation. One is to show you data if you're an authenticated user and you're using the service. One is to be a marketing page if you're not authenticated. And it doesn't really make sense to always create a session every time you visit this page. That's a weird behavior. Like pre-populate a session. So it doesn't really make sense as a flow of when to do that. We need to like opt into creating a session and then start the process. So I think our flow here is going to be a little different, where I think the thing we need to do, and maybe this is more in line with what the homeschool app did, which is my other app that I run. What happens in the homeschool app, here's the subscriptions index page, and when you click a button, the button fires off the script stuff. There's a somewhere in here should be an on click or something. Well, where'd it go? I wired this up for something. There it is. So I wired it up down in the actual script area. So we found the button in the HTML, and we added a click event listener. And the event listener does this work of actually creating the session. So this is different from this view that's presented from djstripe. djstripe says you're coming to this page and it's assumed that you want a session already. And then the session does the work to like automatically redirect you there. But we want a resting state where it's not going to proactively make a session for you. It's only going to make a session when you actually need it. So this is going to need to follow something that's actually similar to this path here, where we hook up our button to actually have a click handler and create a session. And we're going to have to create a page that's similar to this, which will create the checkout session. You can see how this was constructed. It used the fetch API. It does a post request. It had to add in the necessary content types, CSRF header. There's a bunch of stuff here that's actually valuable. And then what the result was is this result is pulled. So after the response comes back, it's going to be some JSON data. And then the JSON data is then connected here at this then clause. And it's passed into this function as data. And we can then extract the session ID and call the Stripe API. All right, so that's a little bit indirect compared to what happens over here, which, okay, that's too bad, but that's what we have to do. The nice part is we will only have to do one of these, so maybe we can simplify this a little bit in how we create this, although this is fairly clean separation of this. All right, has Heroku finished installing? Let's see. I might need a new terminal to actually get that on the path. So let's bring that over. Let's drop this other terminal here, activate this. And can we do make now? All right, back to just having a basic working web server locally. We're going again. All right, so let's bring up the local web server. This is the work we did last time. We added some colors and we talked probably more at length about the logo style and colors in there than we should have, but hey, it's okay. Oh, boo, where'd it go? Now we're back to port 5000. I don't understand why this is switching between different ports. All right, I'm not even sure which account is logged in right now. So let's go to the admin page, which we can't. Okay, we're logged in as testing 6, that's fine. So we're logged in with a valid testing account, which is why it's in the trialing state and showing us this. That's part of our template that we have over here. It's only going to show the button if it's trialing. All right, if we're going to follow a similar pattern that we have for homeschool, which I think is sensible. So my app, there's not a lot of need to do very heavy JavaScript work. I'm not doing a rich client. Most of the work, in fact, as I've mentioned this in the past, is actually through that email interface. So the fact that it's sending emails and returning emails, most of the time the users are not even going to be logging into the app. So I do not want heavy tooling on the app. I want to keep it as lightweight as possible. And one way to do that is just use script tags in the HTML, write little snippets of JavaScript. It's fine. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Like if you just need to write some JavaScript, just write some JavaScript. It's okay. So, but what that does mean is we need a place to put this stuff. And so I'm going to not look at the sign up page. I'm not sure why that's up, but here's our base template. And we need to have a place to put these scripts. And I'm going to follow the same strategy that I had here, which I had a block scripts that is literally going to accept actual HTML tags. I'm not going to assume that it's JavaScript. I'm going to assume that the tags need to be written here. I can't remember if I did this to let my editor know that, okay, it found a script tag and can then see this as JavaScript. Because I think what I tried initially is I put a block here and I tried to put it inside of one script tag, but that made it so that you could not source in other things like the Stripe API here. Also, it messed with the syntax highlighting because my templates thought they were HTML templates, and anytime I wrote some JavaScript code, it was mega confused about what I was doing at the time. So what we're going to do is follow suit, and we'll add a new block here. We'll call it block scripts. The reason we're doing it at the end is that so that it loads late and does not block rendering in any way. Kind of a classic technique. This is less needed, I suppose, if you are using There's certain script attributes that you can use on the script tag to delay their loading till later. I don't remember what it's called. But if we can just put it at the end, we don't have to even worry about that stuff. Keep it super, super simple. Shibili, I'm reading your comment here. Wow, that's you're building a healthcare web app. That's my entire work business. So good luck. That's a lot of work. How would I approach that project idea? That's a tough call, man. I'd say one step at a time. So with any project like that, if you are doing something ambitious, like you could take a look at this project. The course of it is we are just one brick at a time, right? Kind of building that wall or building that house, if you think about it that way. And so focus on, don't try to solve every part of that problem at once. In fact, I don't know if you've read a book called Pragmatic Programmer. In Pragmatic Programmer, there's a concept that is known as tracer bullets. And a tracer bullet, in military terms, a tracer bullet is a kind of a bullet that's used for nighttime operations. So and I'm like, take this for what it is. I'm not a military guy, but this is my understanding of how these weapons are used. So you can have a machine gun in a nighttime setting, and you need to hit a target somewhere. Don't know why. This is just how tracer bullets work. So there's a couple of strategies that you could apply in life or in military strategy. You could measure the whole world of options out there, and you could measure wind, you could measure like temperature, because all of these things would factor in. You could think about the angle of your weapons and like the guns that you're going to point, and then you finally figure out all that information, and then you shoot, and you hope you hit your target. That's one strategy. What tracer bullets are, though, is a different strategy, which says, like, you know what? We can waste some bullets. We have extra ammunition, but we're going to add a bullet in there that has phosphoric elements in it. So, and essentially it lights up the sky. So if you're shooting in the dark, you can see this kind of bullet as it's traveling. And the idea is with the tracer bullet is it helps you find your target faster. Because if you're firing machine gun fire and every 1 out of 100 rounds is one of those tracer bullets, you can actually see it when you couldn't see it in the dark at night. And so people in the military use this as kind of quickly hone in on their target in a kind of a crude way of like, you see that I'm off to the right, so you move a little bit to the left, and that sort of notion. So the authors of Pragmatic Programmer bring up the same kind of idea of using a tracer bullet. And what they mean is not, of course, using weapons, but they're talking about find something that you can run all the way through your system from end to end and see if you can hit your target on the other side. In your case, a healthcare web application. It's like, is there some sliver of functionality end to end that kind of proves out the core of what you're attempting to do? And if once you have done that and use that tracer bullet to find that target, at that point, then you can take that little sliver of functionality and you can increase the depth of it and you can add more features to it. So the approach is the core idea behind that approach is to have working software that does some portion of the job from very early on, and then you build. If instead you planned out everything in advance, this is that other mentality of like military aim, is you build out and plan all the stuff in advance, and then you build and build and build, and you will eventually get to the end point where you have the thing that you wanted, but it will take all that time and you weren't learning anything because the customer is way over here waiting for you to deliver something. So that's the approach that I recommend, and that's what we've seen in this project. Like, I've started out with the very basics of getting something working, very minimal, and then we are layering on top of that. It's a very valuable way of building stuff. So that's how I would approach it if I was in your shoes. It's a very challenging project that you're working on, so I wish you luck. Those are my thoughts. All right, so now we have our scripts block, and we need to add our own scripts. And actually, maybe we'll, in this process, I'm not going to write a bunch of automated tests for this scripts block. It's kind of hard to do in this setup, but we are going to test things along the way. And so we want to hook up, we want to make sure that this button that we have gets hooked up appropriately. So let's add our new script block. And the thing, the thing that I want to verify early is that we have attached a function to our button. Like right now, I think if we, let's come over here, let's do refresh. Now if any, let's check out, we got that block. So we can see that we have this new script tag. I don't know why. Oh, maybe it's because I put it after the body. Whoops, that's a mistake. It should be inside the body. So already found something that we can fix. There we go. So we verified that our new block is there and it's doing something. But if we go to the app page here, and if I click on this button, there's nothing happening. Like it's not doing anything. In fact, it's not even reacting to my click. Maybe that's like a UX thing that we can improve. So what we want to do is go ahead and hook up a function to that. So we need to do, I'm going to do this by adding an ID. And we're going to call this the activate button. That's what it is. So now we have a new button. And we're going to follow like what we did over here. So we're going to say, we're going to get the button by its ID, and then we're going to add a click. In fact, why not just steal this chunk of code? Not quite what I want, but actually it's not far. So let's, whoops, I didn't copy that right. Okay, and then we can paste that in. So the document, so we're dealing with the DOM, the document object model. And so the window of our page has access in JavaScript to this thing called the document. The document is a representation of everything on the page. So we do get element by ID, and instead of monthly button, we want the activate button. So now we're saying like, go get that button. And then we want to add an event listener. An event, there are many events that can happen in a browser. One of them is when you click your mouse. So this is saying, get this button, and whenever there's a click on that button, run this function. And then the function is running some stuff inside of here. And this function says, the first thing it says is it's going to have the actual event. We're calling this prevent default thing. Prevent default is, if this was in a form that had a submissions and stuff, which maybe the other one did, I don't really know why, it prevents any of the natural event processing that would happen. It just stops whatever's going to follow after. It says like, only do what I'm about to tell you to do. So we're going to call create checkout session, and then right now it's taking a monthly price, which we won't have. And then what's going to happen is, you know, that view that we had over here was making this fetch request and getting some data. So this is not ready to go yet, but we can start from here. Do I have some resource? So Shabili, there's some constraints here that I don't know. Like if healthcare is a complicated thing in that it depends on what country you're writing in. I don't know where you're from, but like US, you know, if you're going to write a healthcare app for the US, that's a whole big legal process. There's a lot of laws to follow. So I don't know how I could start you on a healthcare application. And so you're looking for the patient side. Yeah, there's like questions about, well, who's the person on the other side? So there's all sorts of questions that I think that you should have to think through. I don't have a particular app that I can say just go bootstrap from this particular source. I do have, what is it called? We were looking at electronic health record systems at my company. So this is like very specific to the US healthcare system. There was a tool, healthcare, it had Plum in the name. Open source. MedPlum. So this wasn't the right fit for my company because we had already built out a lot of stuff. Also, I don't know if this is for the, you were asking about patients and doing all of that. It may not be for that at all. It may just be on the clinical side, although it mentions a patient portal. So maybe check out MedPlum. But again, I don't know what country you're coming from. I don't know what healthcare laws your country has. So I can't, this like, just take that for what it is. And then that might give you some paths that you could go look up some other stuff. But that was an open source project that has a lot of stuff in there. But that's probably about as far as I can really help you meaningfully on that. All right, let's stay focused on this bit over here. We want to have, so this is getting a monthly price. Where's it getting that from? Okay. So when I was setting this up on Homeschool, I had two different prices, and I was getting them from my own database. And then, so we have a little bit of funny syntax here that may, in many cases, not be super safe, except that I knew exactly the data type that was coming in here. So I personally was vouching for these things. Like, this could only be strings, and strings that I was setting from Stripe. So I know that they would be some kind of Stripe-like ID, and I was not concerned about any security exploits that might come out of this. Similarly, with the Stripe publishable key, like, I'm putting data in here that I've kind of pre-vetted in terms of, do I think this is safe or not? If you're just pulling in data from Python and dumping it in JavaScript, not necessarily the wisest choice if you don't trust the data source. So just as a word of caution. All right, the other thing that we should, so let's just steal more of this. Why not? We've got all of this. Let's take, I want to verify that we are still on Stripe v3. That might have changed, but we'll start from there. And then I know it's not broken. I'm pretty sure it's not broken because it still is on my school desk site. And then we've got all these other attributes that we can paste in as well. But most of them will not ultimately apply to our context here. We can keep calling it a monthly price, and maybe there'll be some future where we have the annual price, but we're not dealing with the annual price right now. The function, oh, you're welcome, Shabili. Good luck on your project. The function can continue to take in a price ID and call a fetch API. And I'm going to leave all this stuff here. Like, it's still going to be a post. Ultimately, we might change the URL. In fact, this page is going to break if we refresh this because there is no URL at this path. But we're going to keep the CSRF token. We're going to want to have JSON content for that price ID. And whatever result we get back from that endpoint, we want the JSON of that. So this is all good stuff to take. And then we can continue to use the Stripe API here. And this is the important part here, is like what Stripe cares about in this process is they want you to make a session and they want you to pass in a session ID. Those are the important elements. All right, so let's save this stuff. Let's run it, see how much blows up in our face. So exactly as I expected, the URL of this, there is no subscriptions URL, so it failed. So I think, where do I want to put these? I think I overdid it on the Homeschool app. I anticipated some other stuff. I think it's totally reasonable for us to have this as an accounts view. So we have an accounts app. Or, yeah, I think it's, yep. Where, Well, where am I? Journal? Ah, okay. Wasn't showing all my directories. I was like, what's going on? So we have our journal app. It's got the accounts app. And then we have our views here. There's no views in here right now. So we can put this session view into this accounts area, because accounts is the thing that has the model, that is the actual account model that is kind of containing the information about our Stripe stuff. So I think that's where we want to hook this up to. And then maybe the difference is we would do something like this, where we, instead of subscriptions, we'll just call this accounts. We'll do this as a accounts namespace. So that'll still fail. We don't have any URLs registered like that. Well, hold on. Maybe the reasons I did what I did. Trying to think about this now. If we look at our project URLs, yeah, here's the challenge. So the natural thing that we'd want to add is put this under accounts. But we already did accounts for our all auth views. That's our authentication, how we log into the system. And we could continue adding more things to the accounts path. But is that the way we want to go? Tabe or Taibe, don't know how to pronounce your handle. I am using Django templates as my front end, and yes, it is vanilla JS. I was just saying a little earlier, you maybe hadn't joined yet. I'm not doing a lot of complicated stuff with JavaScript, so I'm just using little snippets. And in fact, this might be the only JavaScript that needs to exist for this whole site. And it's the only reason I have to have it is because the way to connect to Stripe is through their JavaScript. So you have to do some JavaScript work in order to make that happen. You can't just do pure HTML. Wish I could, in fact, but that's not the reality. So there will be just a little bit of JavaScript here. So I could pre-wire these to be, we've got all of our accounts at all auth. I could also do something like, if it's only going to be a couple of views, and Protect, it might only be a single view, in fact. Okay, cool. You're learning both. Yeah, Django templates can get you super far. And then it's nice to know some JavaScript, although I can't recommend much in terms of resources. When I learned JavaScript, it was a long time ago, and I read, it's probably still a good book. I just don't know how much people reach for it. There was Douglas Crockford's JavaScript, The Good Parts, and basically shows you, like, I think what's more interesting about the book is it shows you some of the really bad warts in the JavaScript design of things you should very actively avoid and why. I don't know if it's a perfect reference for how to run JavaScript in 2023, because there's been a lot of changes in the standard, so probably not the best resource in a bunch of ways. Okay, so let's do this. Let's not create a namespace. Let's just do create checkout session, and we'll do path accounts create session, like that. And we will pull in from a view that doesn't exist yet, which we'll call create session. With a name, needs a particular name. Well, you know what? Let's just continue to be a little verbose. It's okay. We'll say name is going to be create checkout session. And doesn't like it because it's not defined. They're right, it's not defined. What the heck? There's no reason for me to cut out this one word when I'm including it everywhere else. It's just going to be HTTP traffic that shows up. The user won't even see it unless they've got their network tab up for some reason. So it might as well help us for debugging to keep it that way. And then we're going to pull this from journal accounts views, import, create, checkout session. And I'm sure it's not happy about all this stuff, but which again, my editor's telling me, hey, that doesn't exist. What are you doing? But finally, the last step is to do create checkout session. It's going to take a request and create a Stripe checkout session. All right. And we want to return, ultimately we want to return a JSON response, which will have the data we want to have in it to follow suit with what this code over here is expecting from the homeschool app. We're going to use a key of session ID like so. And for the time being, I'm just going to say fake session ID. We haven't hooked it up to any actual Stripe API yet. All right. So some of this may work. Let's see what will work. What's going to happen is monthly price is going to be an empty string. Stripe publishable key will be an empty string. Our view is not taking either of those things right now. This will be the right URL. This will be a valid CSRF token. This is it's not getting called yet, it's just creating the function. So price ID will be a value. When we click the activate button, it's going to have the event go, going to stop any further action, then it's going to call our create checkout section function and pass in the monthly price, which is on is 24 lines up. That's going to go up here, and as I said a moment ago, this is an empty string, so price ID will be an empty string, and it's going to call this view with a JSON body. So there's a to-do step here, handle the request body, and we can pull that code from homeschool. I'm sure there's no magic here, or there's nothing novel that we should be focused on there. So don't replicate that. And it's going to process all that and create a session, and then eventually populate it with a session ID. So that's the flow. So I don't think that this code is going to blow up on the button click. I think where it's going to blow up is it's going to call this, and even on this API call, in fact, should be fine. The problem is when it's going to ultimately call Stripe. Well, maybe it'll blow up here. Maybe Stripe will throw an error because it's not a valid Stripe publishable key. So let's find out. Let's find out where this explodes in our face. Refresh. Reverse. Create checkout session not found. Create checkout session is not a valid view function or pattern name. Really? Create. It's right there. Create checkout session. Did I spell it wrong? Let's line these up. No, those are definitely spelled the same. CREATCH. Okay, so maybe what's happening is like I just never maybe I just need to restart the server. Never picked up that URL for some reason. It doesn't like automatically reload the whole thing. Because it's definitely there. All right, yeah, that was it. Let's refresh. So yeah, we got a bunch of new stuff here. I'm not crazy about the fact that this is loading the JavaScript all the time now. That's not cool. I mean, it's only going to happen on authenticated requests. Maybe I should I'm not going to worry about it. Never mind. Just not going to deal with it. It's okay. So all these, but look how many extra API calls it is. That's crazy. So we've got, like if I ever filtered out by domain, there's a way to do that too. I think if I go minus domain, yeah, that's not even going to get all of them. So that's Stripe. Like, can I do wildcards? Oops. Will that work? No. All right. Minus JS Stripe, minus domain M Stripe. So you can see, ultimately, we only have, well, there's one more in here, minus, just for the sake of completeness, minus Stripe network. Okay. So we have 3 calls, but then as soon as you add Stripe in, Stripe's like, yeah, man, cool. 3 calls. How about 12 calls? 1, 2, I'm exaggerating. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm not far from it though. I'm just going to call you Tab. I don't know if that's your pronunciation, but that's what I'm going to call you. So sorry again if I'm not pronouncing it right. Have I used Python's or Stripe's Python SDK? Yeah, we're going to use that in this. In fact, some of the test view that djstripe gives us, they show us the code to call, and we have to call this stuff. We have to create a checkout session using the Python SDK. So there's a pairing here. There's the JavaScript side that's the that will do the actual redirect to the actual the Stripe page. That was actually for how you sign up. And then in order to get to that page, though, you have to have a session ID that is created by Stripe. So that session ID is obtained by calling Stripe through the Python SDK, passing it back to the browser, and then the JavaScript side function takes that session ID and says, okay, I know how to go to the right place with this. So that's what's going on here. So that's what I think what will happen when I click the button, assuming I can get it to work. I think it will fail if it hasn't already failed. Yeah, it already failed. It failed before we even got there because we weren't using a real Stripe publishable key. We used an empty string. So this is a validation check that we got to fix first. All right, so let's go back to our thing here. Modify this. And we are at, what? Why is everything like, Well, I don't think we're showing the right view there. I think it's showing some really old editor. There we go. So what's next? We're kind of working on this click the button thing, but we got to do all this like setup around it. So what we need next is put the Stripe publishable key into the context. Okay. Now, here's where I think we need to do things a little differently from how I did them in the past. Let's look at how Homeschool did it, and I can point out the difference. So this is the subscriptions index view. And oh man, where am I? Subscriptions index. Okay. So if we go to our views, go to the subscriptions index, you can see that we're getting the Stripe publishable key directly from the settings. All right, that's an important thing to note. In this project, with Stripe, oh, come on. We specifically left off the Stripe publishable key. And the reason for that is djstripe said, hey, we're going to put Stripe keys are now going to go in the database going forward. So that means that in our view, we can't fetch from the settings. We need to fetch from database. So we got to figure out how to get that out of the database. What do we have to call? Some model. I don't remember which one. And maybe the example, did the example show this? Stripe public key, but where did this get it from? Stripe public key. What? djstripe settings? What? No. That doesn't seem right. Because I would think that unless they're doing something where they're already pulling it from the database. Maybe they are, in which case, awesome. All right, so here we're in the djstripe settings. No, it's not going to work. Because they're trying to get it from a setting. And then they're pulling from the live mode or the test mode. But again, these are all from like database stuff. So we can't rely on this setting. We have to get this differently. Well, that's too bad. What do we rely on? Where do they put this model? API key? And how do we know which one to pull? Oh man, that gets so annoying. This is the downside of using the database for all of this data. It's like, and I don't think they really are clear about how to get this in their own documentation because they're still able to rely on the fact that they have the deprecated settings still in their code. They haven't had to update that yet. But I think as soon as they finally get to that version where they're like, well, it's time to remove the deprecated thing, then suddenly things are going to break. We're kind of cutting edge here by not using the Stripe key setting. Also, it makes me think about sorry, train of thought. I want to make sure I say the right thing. We're gonna have to pull this all the time. That's kind of silly. But it would be better in some way to be able to leave it in the settings, because then we're going to take on a database query kind of needlessly. But I think I continue to come back to I'm worried too much about optimization. I don't even have traffic yet, so this is probably not worth fretting about. I think what we need to do is be able to make the right query. Pretty sure it's an API key. Let's Let's launch into our admin, which seems to be back on port 5000 now. Let's go into the admin site, and we will use Matt at, and I think it's create horse. Yeah, cool. And we have the API keys. This is where Stripe's going to read from. And we haven't put anything in yet. And this is the same thing I have to do on the production site. I need to add this API key. Oh, this feels so weird. Like, these are public keys too? Hold on. I want to make sure I understand this right. I might be getting this wrong. I might be thinking about this as there is a private key and a test key, but there's also the Stripe public key. Okay, hold on. Which might be just a Stripe thing and not a djstripe thing. djstripe might be trying to manage our different, yeah. Sorry guys, I am not keeping a consistent train of thought this evening. Okay. They detect it from the key. So the challenge is like there's like all sorts of keys at play. There's the private key. That's what's needed by, that's what they're calling secret keys here, right? And then there's the publishable key. They're calling it a publishable key because that key will show up right here in, well, it's going to show up, it's going to be rendered right here in the HTML. So it is by design something that is going to be very visible to anybody who has a browser. If you visit the site and you've authenticated, you can see the Stripe publishable key. And publishable means that, hey, we trust the fact that this is not going to be truly secret. So Stripe provides this kind of key for interacting with the JavaScript API. So we have to plug that in. And I think where I'm getting wrapped up here is that djstripe has opinions on the secret keys and not necessarily the publishable keys. But let's go verify that. djstripe. So you can see here they've got a screenshot, which this is definitely, this SK prefix means it's a secret key, even though it's a test key, so it's a secret test key. Ah, okay. Once saved, djstripe will automatically detect whether the key is a public, restricted, or secret key, and whether it's for live or test mode. Interesting. So we can stuff all of these things in there, get like a publishable key, and put it in there. Public key. Oh, hold on now. Public key versus publishable key, are those different things? Do I have an environment? Homeschool. Okay, I think I do. I'm going to put on my secret screen for a moment. I'm going to look at the Stripe publishable key in here. See if I set it. Okay, I have. So it is something that starts with PK. So publishable and public seem to be synonyms. Surprisingly, I thought they were different, but maybe not. Okay, so let's focus on what we need here. I think what we need is the public or publishable key, which they might have an attribute for. Let's look at that. Where'd it go? Well, it's not showing up. Not showing up on here. Is it one of the model fields? So on the API key, does it show public or private? Type. What is this type thing? Oh my word, so much indirection. Stripe, enum field. What? I don't think that's what I meant. Oh, there we go. API key type. All right, so it is publishable. So it's going to detect this. So we want to filter down, do a filter for the publishable key, but we also need to filter on the mode, like it's whether it's live or not. I think. Yeah. There's a live mode. There's the, like when we do our query, we need to test both live mode and the API key type. I think with homeschool, I kind of baked that into right here. Like I had a Boolean that I added, and then I picked, well, this is the example for secret keys, but I think there might be something similar for the publishable key. Settings, pub. Yeah, publishable key is the same kind of deal. Like you're either picking the live one or the test one based on this Boolean state. So we don't pre-compute that. We'll have to put that factor that into our query, but we might need to make. Hold on, live mode. Yeah, live mode is a Boolean that we're going to have to add as a configuration. Because when we're in that view and we want to add that Boolean filter, how are we going to know if it's live mode or not? So that's a new setting we'll need. Oh man, so many layers. Okay, so we're keep adding to the stack. It's okay. We need to add Stripe live mode Boolean to settings. Like an onion, indeed, Zephyr. And this is why this stuff is like, it's not, none of this is hard. It's just you have to navigate this very narrow path of what's acceptable and what's not. And you need to be careful. Now, if we were sloppy about live mode and we loaded up all these API keys into our local database, it's possible that I could create like sessions with my real API keys in my local development environment. And that's something I don't want to run into. Wasim, let me look at your comment here. Yes, to answer your question, I do. So I work for a company called Included Health. You want to go search for them? Here's the company name. It is exactly like I said it though. Included Health. It's a U.S. healthcare company, and we do a lot of healthcare stuff. Because of that, I have to be very familiar with HIPAA. In practice, so HIPAA is the healthcare laws in the United States if you're not in the United States. And in practice, it means stuff around data retention, being really serious about security, and PHI is the three-letter acronym that is most important. That's personal health information. We also have PII, which is personally identifiable information, which is also sensitive, but PHI is like, do you have cancer? Do you have heart issues? Whatever. We want to be really careful with that stuff, and we are obligated to by law. So it means that, like sometimes you'll work on an app. Well, I don't know what kind of experience you have. I've worked on apps in the past where been able to take some chunk of production data and plop it on my developer machine, and it's okay because it's not sensitive data in any way. It's just like, okay, it's fine to work with. There's no problem. You can't do that in a healthcare context, because taking some random chunk of production data means you could pull down somebody's healthcare data and learn a bunch of information about random people, the random members that you have on your application, and it's like not your right to do so according to the law. So dealing with HIPAA it turns out to not be so bad, but there are just some extra steps and security precautions you have to take. Yeah, you're right, Zephyr. There's a surprising number of things that can identify a person. It's very true. Okay, I hope that we have reached the bottom or top of our stack. If you're truly thinking of a stack of like plates, I don't think there's any other new plates that we have to put on. So let's leave this comment updated. Let's start working on this, and then what I want to do is get the configuration and then build out the view and add the context data that's going to make that stripe error go away that we saw on the actual page of this thing. I want to have it have a real value. That will mean logging into Stripe and, oh crud, I don't think I've set up Journey Inbox at all. This will be fun, y'all. Let's see, see how far we can get. But the basic concepts, at least, we'll get those going. We'll use API keys. We'll put those queries into our index view. Oh yeah, it's going to be good fun. So let's start over here. Let's start with this, straight up copying the Stripe Live Mode key. We will go to our settings page, come down to the environment, config. Oh, we already have it. How about that? So it's almost like I knew it. Knew we were going to need it. It's right there. Wow. All right. One step ahead of myself, apparently. Well, that's the easiest checkbox to complete then. Oh, cool. Thanks for coming in, Tabe. Good questions. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Cool. Now we can work on the next thing. So now that we have the live mode, we know that we can query for the publishable key. That's the API type we want. And in live mode of false. And those are things that we can add. Now, what I didn't get a sense of is if you paste in a key, does Stripe know how to figure out whether it's a live mode or not? Oh yeah, it's baked into the name because it's PK_test or PK_live, right? So it should be able to figure that out. All right, I'm gonna walk on eggshells here. Gotta get into Stripe. Okay, so my goal is to get into Stripe. At least if I can get to, because it might end up on the homeschool stuff. What's important is that I don't share with you my real customers' data and excuse me, any personally identifiable stuff about my Stripe account. So that's important to me. So I'm going to set it to the secrets screen. Hopefully you all can still hear me. It looks like my audio thing says you can. And I'll just talk through this as I'm clicking stuff. I'm going to log in with Stripe. And I'm at the Stripe login page. And I have to unlock some other things first. Yeah, definitely don't want to dox myself. And so I've put in my credentials. It's a standard email password thing. It's asking me to sign in. I'm hitting continue, and it's going to prompt me to put in my two-factor authentication, which I have somewhere, and I have to go find it. So 1 second. Stripe and bump, 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 bump. All right, and then it's asking me to do all this other stuff because I haven't logged into Stripe for a while, but I've already done all these things, so I'm going to say continue. And I'm getting kicked over to the Stripe dashboard. And I'm on school desk. I'm not in test mode, so if I switch it to test mode, I should be safe to show the screen. Oh man, they've got like, it's been so long since I've actually needed to log into Stripe because I haven't had to do this configuration for quite a while that they've rearranged some of the menus, and now I'm getting one of the classic like walkthroughs of stuff that to do. Okay, I think I've clicked through everything and staring at this for a moment just to make sure I haven't shown off anything I don't need to. Okay, looks good. So this is Stripe if you've never seen the dashboard before. What we need to do here, and where we may run into trouble, is if I can't, so I've got this, it took a little bit of configuration to get School Desk going, and so I can't remember if it's going to ask me a bunch of questions about, am I this certain kind of business, and we might get blocked on this step. And if we truly get blocked, I guess one way we could get around it is I could plug in, all we truly need today is, I believe we just need the, well, maybe that's not true. We might need both a Stripe publishable key, so I think we need two keys. I think we need the Stripe publishable key in a test mode, and I think we need the Stripe secret key in a test mode. The publishable key is for the JavaScript side. When we actually want to create a session thing, get redirected somewhere, that's that side. But in order to get the session and make API requests, we have to use the Stripe Python SDK. And the Stripe Python SDK requires an API key. So yeah, there's that. Yep, that's the piece that we have to do. So let's see if we can, I'm gonna poke around, see how, I would love to get this setup complete so that we don't have to mess around with putting School Desk information into Journey Inbox and then going back and correcting that. That's not something I'm really interested in, but I want to do progress on this, so I will do that if I need to. But I'm going to put it back to secrets mode for a moment, and I'm going to set the process going of how do we create a new account. All right, this is something I can show, at least could just show where we're starting. So I went to School Desk, and well, gosh, I just am not comfortable clicking any of these buttons without not knowing, because I don't know what's going to show up on the next page. So we're gonna toggle back and forth. It's gonna kind of be sucky, but so I clicked that new account button that was showing underneath School Desk, and I'll bring this page up. So we've got account name. So this is going to be our account name. We'll call this Journey Inbox. We are in the country of the United States for our operations. Get back to secrets because I don't know what's going to show up next. I hit the create account button to start the process. And maybe that's it. So, all right. We are here. So this is what popped up immediately after I haven't clicked anywhere else. It activate payments on your account. Fill out your yeah, there's no way this is happening tonight. Well, we asked to provide standard business details such as contact information. All right, they might pre-fill some stuff, so let's try it. Let's see how far we get. So I'm going to say activate payments. It's the big button on there. And they're asking me, oh yeah, I got to add, no way. There's no way I'm getting this done tonight. Check it out. Nothing sensitive here. So I would say yes to these things, but I'd have to go fetch bank information, and no way in heck am I doing, even on the stream, I just don't want to. Y'all absolutely do not need my bank credentials and account numbers and stuff. So sorry, y'all. We're going to deal with we're going to deal with what we got, and I'll come back to this. And so this is my homework off stream, and my promise to y'all is I do as much of I do all the coding I can, which should be all of it, on stream, but I cannot make the same promise on configuration because I can't show you my secrets, because then what's value am I offering to my customers, and what protection am I offering to myself? So that's just how this goes. Yeah, we don't set this up in PyTest. You're right. It will gladly. We can stub out a lot of this. In fact, we can go over the pattern that I used. One of the things I did, and I like this, although I'm not even sure I like this implementation. We can talk about this a little bit. Is this notion of a gateway. Well, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. One thing at a time. So, let's see. Matt must create a Journey inbox account in Stripe off stream because it requires sensitive information. All right. So that's that. We're not going to be able to check that one off tonight. Too bad. Yeah, it is what it is. Let's take a look at, what was I going to look at? The gateway, yes. So there's a pattern. This is not unique to Stripe. This is to like any vendor that you might want to do. And the idea is this. You could take an API, like a Stripe API, and you could directly use the SDK in all of your code. And that would work fine. The advantage of that side of doing that is that there is less work for you to do initially. The disadvantage of that side is maybe twofold. Because the SDK has every piece of functionality that is offered by the vendor, if somebody sees the SDK in raw use within the rest of your app code, then they don't necessarily know which pieces you are using versus not using. That's one thing. The other thing is, to your question, Zephyr, about testing, if you choose to use an SDK directly, you must find a way to test with that in place. All right, so that can be hard. It can be doable, but most likely it's going to be hard because these SDK authors are often not thinking about, hey, my thing is going to be used by somebody else's code. So instead, what I've done here, and this is not like a unique idea from me, is followed something called a gateway pattern. And all problems in computer science can be solved with another layer of abstraction or something like that. And it's just another layer of abstraction. So the gateway pattern is a way of saying it does two things. It provides your own interface that your system uses. So when School Desk wants to interact with Stripe, it does it through the Stripe gateway. And this gateway, it's only 94 lines. It's not very big. And the advantage of this is that you're very crisp about, here's what I'm using from the SDK, because it all has to go through one layer. So you're essentially only exposing exactly what you need in the methods that you needed them as. So I have this thing where I'm getting the price, And so I expose the price. So I'm not even like my regular app code doesn't even know that there's a price model from djstripe. It's totally wrapped up by the gateway. Similarly with some of these other things, they're all wrapped up by using the gateway. And that includes, one of these is at the top here, that includes the Stripe checkout session, right? Cool. So the checkout session is doing everything and then eventually calling that API that we saw in djstripe of Stripe checkout session create. All right. What is the power of this? The power of this, whoops. Don't delete all that. That's bad. The power of all of this is that if you're testing things, you can mock them out if you want to. So I could create a fake gateway. And as long as it's adhering to this API, it's like creating a session when the inside of that does nothing and returns something that looks like an ID. You could unit test this very fast. There's no network calls. There's no concern of contacting Stripe. There's no configuration. All of that stuff is out of your way. You just have a very simple API in comparison. I think we'll do that. I think the difference that I might change about it this time, well, I don't know. There's a couple of schools of thought on gateways. One thought is I'm going to make a generic gateway. Like instead of calling it Stripe gateway, I would call it payment gateway. And payment gateway is going to do payment-y kind of stuff. And if done well, if the abstraction is not leaky, then you could swap out to Braintree or something like that. Or yeah, exactly that, in case Stripe goes away, or you add more, exactly. So that is one school of thought. It's pretty good. All right, so what would the naysayers to Stripe gateway or payment gateway say? They might indicate, hey, wait a minute, this checkout session concept? Nah, no other payment gateway even has this concept. So if you need to have an interface to the session, it's only going to matter for Stripe, so you can't swap out Braintree for Stripe. I don't know if Braintree has a session concept, so just assume for the moment that they don't, even if they do, if you've studied them and they do, assume that they don't. Then this implementation would have to change anyway. But I guess the advantage of having a payment gateway, so I think I'm going to lean towards payment gateway, and here's why. My thinking is that yes, Stripe may be the only thing that has a session. And yes, I may never, and it's actually likely that I would never switch off of Stripe. But in the event that I did, like, okay, maybe I'd have to redo the session stuff, but if I had a price thing, which was a monthly price, and I had it just as a method, then if I did switch to a Braintree, then it would be fine to just implement this method, and that would work. So I think I'll call it a payment gateway. But I can see the counter thing that says, like, you know what, just keep it specific to the service and make it concerned with service details. Don't try to over abstract things. But I think it's okay for it to it to be an abstraction that works partially and then is also a little bit leaky, if that makes sense. And we may want to use this before, as part of our index view, we're getting some of these keys. I don't know. Let's see. So what I say was going to do next. Yeah, put the Stripe. So the Stripe publishable key into the context. We need to put that into the index view. All right, I'm going to pause for 2 seconds. I'm going to go get a glass of water. I'm out of something to drink. I'm doing a bunch of talking, and I was actually at an event this evening, so my throat's getting a little hoarse. I'll be back in 60 seconds to 2 minutes. Okay, let's get back to it. So where do we need to go next? We know, actually, you know what? Before I get too deep, I want to not have this error. So I'm going to comment out some stuff. I think we can get away with just commenting out this line. Oh, wow. I thought it was a template comment. I guess that would have worked. Would that have worked? Probably. Doesn't even render in the, yeah, okay, cool. So we're down to one error, and we need to add a favicon later. Do I have an issue for that? We don't even have an icon, so fav, nope. Okay. Quick issue add favicon. That'd be nice. All right. Then back to here. Okay. So where do we need to go? We need to get a price. We need to get, well, this is a price identifier too. That's interesting. And then we need to think about a home for the gateway. I think it could still live in the accounts app. So, well, no. So this is a pretty different subject. So we don't need a new Django app, I don't think. But there's nothing in Django that says you have to keep everything in apps. Question is, we could go up and we could say, there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could say, like, every time we have a vendor that we want to integrate with, we have a gateways package. I think I like that one the least, because that's structuring on the pattern, the thing that, like, I've got a gateway for Stripe. I've got a gateway. I mean, we didn't do this, but I could have a gateway for SendGrid. So I think rather what I'd want to do is create a package for the concept that we care about. And this is all related to payment. So, and the term that's used is generally a payment gateway. So I think I'll create a package here called payments. Why not? And then the only thing in there could be the gateway to start. We'll create a new directory. We need an init file. In theory, these things could operate independently from Django. But if we integrate this with djstripe, then Django's application loading comes in, so we have to be careful with that. Will I pass payment providers to the gateway? Good question. I don't know that I need that level of extensibility right now. So yeah. Not sure, Zephyr. I'm still processing this myself, so I don't have a solid answer for you yet. Let me think on it a moment. Like what I did, and this is where, like, my Stripe gateway here, it becomes particularly leaky. Like this thing And I'm not sure actually even how I tested with this thing. Curious. So I have some tests for the Stripe gateway, but anything that needed to use the Stripe gateway, what I did, so I essentially created this class to have a container, and then I had the Stripe API at module level scope, and you can see inside of here, it's just calling the Stripe API directly, setting that. So there's definitely going to be some things different here because, like we've already said, well, this cements the fact that we'll need to use Django. We'll need to use djstripe to get the API key from a database call. So I can't put that at module level scope because that's something that happens. That's something that won't work until I can actually do the database query, which won't be possible until djstripe is ready. So the one way to handle that is, oh geez, I don't know if I like this. Yeah, this is very side effecty. The side effect that I'm thinking of is there are ready methods. I think we already used one of them to initialize something. Yeah, we used it for Sentry. So there's in this app config notion that you have a ready method that can be used as a hook whenever an app is ready. So in theory, we could add to one of the Django apps something that will, when it's ready, I don't know how we'd hook into djstripe, but when it was ready, you could like call the gateway and say like initialize yourself, because now you can ask for the API key. I don't like that very much. But what is the alternative? What else can we do? The other thing we could do, so like in well, shoot, I am in homeschool. Gateway, Stripe gateway. So if we had this bit of module level state and something imports it, it's going to be a shared instance for all of those modules because it's a reference to this thing. It's each import of it will be the same object, the same Stripe gateway. So if we did like a lazy initialization that said, hey, the first time you get used, load the API key, that could be another way to do this. I'm not really digging that either. I'm trying to figure out a way that we can, is there a place at which we can logically, without like side effects and weirdness, initialize the Stripe gateway in a way that everybody's going to respect. So we know that the place I'm leaning towards is like maybe the accounts ready signal. The challenge with that is, no, ready is like, now I'm trying to remember. When ready fires, can you query any of the apps, or is it just that app? Or is it like an apps not loaded kind of thing? Oh, that's troublesome. I think you can query any of the apps, but I might be wrong. Because my fear is this, like, let's say we use the accounts ready method and initialize the gateway from that ready method. But I mean, even logically, like if they were to happen alphabetically, which I don't know that that's how that happens, it might go by installed apps. But let's just assume for the moment they're alphabetical. If accounts ready fires first and djstripe is not loaded yet, and you try and query for the API key, what happens? So that may not work. Okay. And then, so the other thing that could be done is not use a module level thing at all. We could create a new gateway every single time that the view is loaded. But I don't like this either. And this is actually a problem with the Stripe SDK, in my opinion. The SDK has this weirdness where you set the API key at the SDK level. You don't set it on like an instance of something. So well, maybe we should go check. Maybe there's another option where you can get an instance and create the API key at that time. Maybe the default way is just having an API key set as a convenience thing. But if we can ask for, hey, give me a Stripe SDK instance, and I'm going to pass you an API key at that time, can we do that? If that's the case, then it might do more calls than we want. But what we could do is every time the index view is rendered, we in that view create a gateway and ask for a Stripe SDK instance. We do the query for the API key on the database. We get it. We create the gateway. We have the gateway accessible to us. All right, let's check on that. It sounds pretty convoluted. I'm not crazy about it. But it sounds like the most explicit way to do stuff. Python Stripe SDK. Reference. This is the actual like API. Yeah. If they do this pattern here. Well, they're showing my, oh, thankfully there's a test key. There it is, y'all. Downside of, glad it's not a live key. Good grief. All right, didn't mean to show that. Well, crap. What can you do? Quietly welcome. Good evening to you as well. Trying to find the Python docs. Okay, let's just look at like the straight up Python code. Go back to, what were we searching for? We did Python Stripe SDK. Let's look at it on GitHub. And yeah, they show the same pattern. Per request configuration. Oh wow, look at that. You can put the API key in the individual call? Is that really? Configuring a client. Configuring a proxy. Automatic retries. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, there's that possibility of maybe we just do that style that they was showing, that like you pass in the API key to the call. So you never initialize the whole module. And if we do that if we follow that gateway pattern, then I think this is doable. Well, we'd have to remember to do it every time. Otherwise it's going to blow up in our face. So that's probably okay. It's kind of weird. Certainly goes against the grain of what they want you to do. But again, does anybody else feel weird about this, where it's like, set this module level scope to set your API key? What feels wrong about that? Okay. So we've got our payments thing. Let's create the gateway. Gateway.py. Let's create a class. We'll just call it gateway since we're, no. Be explicit, why not? Payments gateway. A gateway for interacting with the payments vendor. Excuse me. All right, and then yeah, so how's this going to go? Every time, so we can hide away the logic about which key to use inside the gateway, and we can just delay using the gateway until we're in a particular view. So it's not the most efficient use. There's like some unnecessary database calls in there. It's like database call per use, which again, maybe there'd be ways to cache that, set up a longer term client configuration. Yeah, there are probably ways around that, but I don't know that we need to handle that. Okay, so let's go over to, where are we going? We're going to the core view. This is the index. And so far we have nothing in our index. And then we can have, we know we need the publishable key. In fact, let's change the name. If we're truly trying to be like, this is a payment gateway, then what we want to be able to pass in is, let's take out the Stripe name, the payments publishable key. Okay. And so I guess the first method that we're going to have is, this should be a property or not. I think it could be a property. Some people would say like, no, don't make a property. It's a database call. You're doing a fetch to a database. That's bad. I don't know that I agree. If you do like a ton of work, like properties are, you don't want to hide a lot of work in a property, I guess. But I think there is value in properties, and like, I don't know. I guess I fall more in the camp of, yeah, let's use a property. It'll look nicer. It'll be a nicer API. Another person might say like, no, you need to do like fetch publishable key or something like that. Indicate you're doing some work. But I don't care. So what do we want here? What's going to go into the publishable key? We need it to be, well, we need a few things first. We need to go to djstripe. Oh, boo. What's the import path? djstripe, why are you not coming up? Huh? Oh, that's crap. djstripe is definitely, there we go. Enums import API key type. Okay. So now we know we want, and I want this to blow up. Like if it doesn't find it, it needs to find it. It needs there to be. Now there's a good question about like what if we have more than one? Like you're supposed to be able to allow some migration, but maybe I don't care. Maybe I'll just manage that myself. The whole reason that a big part of the reason that they're doing the database version for keys is so that you can rotate keys by putting in a new one or something like that. I don't know the whole mechanism for that, but what I'm going to do here is we're going to say djstripe models API. We want the API key, and we want to pull out by the type. So this is going to be from djstripe dot models import API key, and now we want to return the API key objects filter. No, objects get. I want to get the right one, and we want, what's the attribute? We want the live, so we got to get it out by the live mode. Live mode can be the secondary thing, but I'll put it first just because it's easier to access. And we want Stripe live mode. So that's going to be from Django.conf import settings. And then we'll do Stripe live mode. Okay. So this chunk of code right now in the final production configuration would fail because we're going to have two keys in live mode. We're going to have the publishable key and we're going to have the secret key. So we need to get more specific. Otherwise, get is going to throw an exception and say return multiple instances, that kind of thing. So the other piece that we need on here is the type. That's that other field. We say type equal, and this is where we bring in API key type dot publishable. That should work. I'm assuming you can use enums that way. Be pretty shocked if that query does not work. So now, the nice part is we haven't even touched Stripe yet. This is just going to be data that we have. So in our index, we can now say, go from journal payments gateway, import payments gateway. And then we can do, in this thing, we can say payments gateway, create one. And in our context, we would add the, what was it called? Publishable key, right? Payments publishable key. Payments publishable key. And do payments gateway publishable key. Oh, whoops. Let's type annotate it while we're here. Let me a string. Ah, I'm already seeing a failure. No, that's not what we want. We want, so this would get the actual instance. That's not right. Instead, what we want is the secret. That's the value thing. So we'll do dot secret. So the get call should be resolved to a specific instance and then pull the secret out of that and return that as the key. All right, so let's see this go. I have a feeling we have enough now. I don't trust the live reloading to have done the right thing during all those changes. So let's see it explode. Why is it going to explode? It's going to explode because we don't have an API key in there yet. Should explode. What? You didn't explode? How did that work? Oh, I didn't. You know, it's funny. I get on my son about this. You got to save your file. I saved the gateway. I didn't save the views file. All right. Did it reload? I think it should have. No, I didn't see it indicate some kind of reload. Is Gunicorn not doing reload on save? If so, why not? Should be. What am I missing? Gunicord command args. Do we have that? No. We haven't done enough actual development with a live server to have this bite us yet. So we're going to do this now. We're going to come over to the env example and put in the gunicorn command args. This is just for our example environment, and it's the reload flag. So anytime we make a change in our Python code, it should detect and actually do that reload. You would see it here. It would come up as one of these web options of detected changes in payments gateway and reloading blah blah blah. But it didn't do either of that. So we've now added this. I got to put this on secrets for a second because I have to put this on the actual env file, which I don't have it on currently. I'm putting it in there, I'm saving it, and then leaving that file. So I'm going to come back to the example, bring this back up. So let's see if that actually worked. So now we've got this. I wish it would say which flags we were using. That's too bad that it doesn't. But you can't have everything you want. So let's just try for a second. Well, first we have to, okay, cool. We've got the API key doesn't exist. That's the blow up that I was expecting to see that we didn't see a moment ago. So let's put some space in there and let's add in some junk characters just to see if that'll trigger a reload. Hey, it detected the gateway changed, and so it reloaded the worker. Let's undo that because that's a junk comment. We'll get another change here in a second, I think. Really, guys? Oh, why is it delayed? Oh, you know what it was? I bet it's because I didn't actually do a request, so it didn't need to reload the process. No matter, we still don't have an API key. All right, so I'm going to come back in here, and I'm on the. Oh, I have 3 of these. Interesting. Where I'm on the admin, and this is going to be, we'll call this the test publishable key. So I'm going to go steal the homeschool one, just so that we have a key. Just put this over here. Can't really show this. So I'm going to go in the env file. I'm going down to the test key area. Oh, this is the publishable key. So taking all of this, I'm copying it into my paste buffer, pasting the value, and I'm hitting save. And going back. So it says that it's not live mode. That's good. It says it's a publishable key. It figured it all out. Now, I don't think I should really show the value itself because it's on there. You'll just have to take my word for it. And bring, well, if I go back over here, you're going to see everything. So let's not do that. Let's come over here. Gosh, so dangerous to have all that information just flying about willy-nilly. I'm doing my best to not rotate keys. Okay, I'm going to leave school desk and bring this back. So here you see we now have this test publishable key. As if I did this right, we could be able to go back to the index view. Where are you going? And now if we refresh this, here we are. Cool. No explosion, so it tells me it got the API key. And let's see. Let's also bring Stripe back. Reload again. Now Firefox is doing that thing where it keeps reloading my chat. Stop doing that, Firefox. Okay. It didn't blow up. So no. I know that it worked. I think. I guess I wasn't paying enough attention. Was this message there last time? Because we're over HTTP, but we're using a test key, so I think it's able to detect that. But I don't remember if that was there. So let's comment that out again. It might have only appeared. Well, maybe it appeared on both just because it's loading the JS file. Let's find out. Yeah. Okay. Notice that one message is missing. So it says this page is in Quarks mode, but that's a local host message. For standards mode, use doctype HTML. What? Am I not using doctype HTML? What the heck? Okay, hold on. Let's go fix the base template. I think this has to be at the very top. Well, what's going to happen if I put it one line below? Like one line down. Is it going to complain? No. Okay. We're missing the doc type that indicates it's HTML5. Okay, so we don't have any message, but when we come back over here and use the Stripe instance, then we get the message saying like, all right, you can use this because you're using a test key. But if you do the real thing, you need HTTPS because then you're dealing with real people's data. So it's a good signal because last time we had this where we didn't have the key, it said, what did it say? It said you don't have a publishable string. It's an empty string. And the fact that it has a value tells me that it's and didn't blow up. I think if we gave it a junk value, it probably would say that's not a key. What are you talking about? Like if we could probably test that right now. Let's say publishable key is equal to some junk. Let's reload the page. Oh, okay. Apparently it's okay with some junk. Surprising. But it would fail when we actually try to do something with it, I think is what would happen. Okay, in this source, we still have no price ID. So that's something that we need to add to our list of to-do stuff. So we got this piece done. Put the stripe publishable key into the context. And now we need to get the monthly price. Where's that going to come from? And there are a bunch of other things we need to do. So I'm going to wrap up because it's getting late in my time, but we're making headway here. A lot of pieces that we have to pull together. Let's see. We had a lot of discussion. We're like all over the place, up and down. Let's see what we got here. And let's also run I need to add some tests. I bet we're missing some test code. Almost certainly missing test code. Yeah, we got stuff that doesn't exist. Ooh, good times. We got to fix some stuff. So what? Now what? We had two views that failed, both the index views. And the reason they failed is because they don't have an API key. Like the database starts off empty. So that's not cool. So we have to create an API key for our test to pass. Let's get the test fixed. Then let's add the test coverage we need and then call it a night. We're done there. Let's go to the test views. This is the core. These are the tests that are failing. Okay. In order to do this, we don't have djstripe. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't think they do. I don't think that they have any kind of factories in their tests. Also, I think we discovered they don't ship their tests. So even if they did have factories, it wouldn't really matter. So it's our job to provide some fake test data. We're going to need an API key. We're going to add a fixture that we can add to our tests here. And how do we add a class fixture? We've got a, where did my cursor go? There it is. We've got a class for this testing this view. PyTest class fixture. Fixtures are ways to do setup data in PyTest. And we can take advantage of them because we're not using unit tests, we're using standard classes. Regular classes rather than something deriving from unit test. And there's a scope attribute of fixtures. And so you can have fixtures at different scope, but one of them is class scope. And that's where we want, because we want to set this on the class scope, so we only have to do it once for the class. Yeah. But then I don't remember how to set it on a class for using a class-based fixture. I know how to declare it, but when it comes to actually setting it on the class, how about we search for class? Maybe they'll give us an example. What is this? Oh, gross. There's a way to decorate a particular, like a whole class to use a fixture. This should be easy, but I haven't done this in so long. PyTest add fixture to class. So you declare this class, cool. But then how do you add the like admin client? Not cool. Could use auto use, but that sucks. I could have sworn that there's a way to not only make a fixture for class scope, then that say use it for the class, because otherwise how would you do that? There it is. Use fixtures. Right? I think that's it. I think that's what I was looking for. Using, here we go. Use fixtures in classes and modules with the use fixtures. Aha, okay. So we want to import PyTest. That's our test framework. So we do import PyTest. And then we will do PyTest fixture. And then we'll say scope equal class. Wow, that's awesome. I don't know how to figure that out. That was cool. And we say publishable key. That's our function. And then we do a creation here. So we do, this is a test mode. Test mode by default should be false. Yep, stripe test mode is false. So we're gonna yield this thing. I don't know that we're gonna actually use it anyway, but we'll yield it anyway. And we'll do API key, which we don't have yet. Objects create, and we're going to pass it in. We probably won't have enough attributes. This is where we're going to have a bunch of, there's probably some stuff that's required here. But let's see what we can get away with. We'll do, it was secret was one of the attributes that we needed. And that's something like PK test, and then it had a bunch of junk after it. Let's see if we can just do like 1, 2, 3, 4. And we need live mode equal false, and we need type equal API key type dot publishable. All right. And then we go like this. We say PyTest mark use fixtures publishable key. So now our test should use that if we did this right. Ah, phooey. Database access not allowed. Screw you guys. Do we not have comp test? I thought I did this already. So it's probably, well, piece of crap. If that changes things or not. Okay, here's the problem. We can't do class scope. So, all right, I didn't think I'd have to get into how PyTest works, but let's do it. PyTest has different categories of fixtures. That's what we saw briefly in the documentation. Session scope is for the entire test suite run. Class, there's a module scope that's underneath that. That's like you're running a test module, it's for that time. There's one underneath that's class, and then you get down to function. And different fixtures can be applied to those different things. And so if you have a fixture that's at session scope, it runs just once at the beginning and then tears down at the very end. And if you do module, it's got a smaller chunk, and class is even a smaller chunk, and then you get functions, the smallest chunk. So I have this little trick in here to do this loading of the database fixture because we're using PyTest Django, and it needs the database. And I didn't want to add the Django, the DB mark or whatever it's called for each thing. So what I did was I had this early fixture that runs, and they run alphabetically, which is why I named it AAA DB here. It's kind of a hack to make this work. And it helps me avoid adding, telling PyTest, hey, this is going to need the database. Hey, this is going to need the database. They just all need the database. The problem is that doesn't work. It doesn't work with a class-based fixture because the class happens at a scope that's larger than the function scope. So this class scope thing is outside of where the function thing, the AAA database, happens. So I think what we need to do is just make this a function-based scope, which is what, or a function scope, which is what fixture is by default. And now, even though we've marked it for the class, it's not going to run just for test index. It's going to run for each one. I think that should do the trick. Yeah, nice. All right, if that didn't make too much sense, I'd say don't worry about it. It's not an important detail this evening. Let's try it out and see where we are now. So we should have all passing tests at this point. Okay, cool. And we are missing, so we even have that publishable key, although we're not really testing it. It's not good. We need a test for it. So we're executing the code, but we're not testing the code. That's no good. And then we're missing accounts view. What line? It's missing line 7. Oh, that's that create session thing that we didn't start yet. Accounts, views. So we didn't actually use this thing yet. So for now, I don't feel like fighting. Oh man, it's gonna, yeah, we need this because it's doing the URL reverse on this thing. Boogers. Okay. Well, we'll add a test here too. Fine. So, do I want to? I don't know. Figure out these PyTest tabs. So I'm not going to write those publishable tests tonight. We'll do that later. Write test for gateway publishable key. And then we will quickly write a test that we'll come back to for the create session thing, just to get the coverage. But we can get away with not writing this test for the publishable key yet because it is being executed by the index method, index function. So let's take the create checkout session. We only want that to run. The only person that should be able to call this, I think it just needs to be connected to a user later. So let's put in a note here. To do should be authenticated. Oh man, this is making me think about authentication and access. We haven't really touched on access control. There's a category problem that we're punting on right now that we'll need to come back to. But I want to go ahead and record the issue. So I'm going to say add Django denied. Talk about that later. So don't worry about it right now. I need to make a note for myself to do it. Okay. And then final thing we want to do is test this. I'm going to steal this because I don't think we have any kind of test whatsoever in the accounts app. Or we don't have any view tests, I should say. Test views, paste that, and we want to do, where was reverse from? URL, right? Django URLs import reverse. And we need from journal accounts test factories import user factory. Okay, these tests should pass because we're just pulling them in from another area. Nothing. Oh, they don't. Okay, they don't pass because they're calling the thing that we just fixed, and we didn't pull in the fixture. That's okay, but we don't need this one, and we're not actually going to be calling the index. What we're really going to call is create checkout session. That's all we need to do right at the moment. And I think I just noticed a typo in that other one. Let's test this. Great. Passed. Oh, I just must have deleted. No, there it is. Missing an E. Okay. Run our coverage. See how we're doing. Back to 100%. Okay. Let's check the code and then we'll wrap it up for the night and talk about what's next. Let's do all this. So we added a new reload flag that allows our code during test to do automatic reloading. That's cool. We've got some tests for the checkout session thing, which we're not really doing anything with, but we've included in the JavaScript, and we needed a URL to it, which means we needed to be able to put a view to it, which means we needed an empty view here, which is what we've created here. So we've got some to-dos that we've got to clean up later to actually get the session from Stripe. This is the view where we're actually going to plug in the gateway to get the session, but we have not implemented that feature of the gateway yet. We had to go back and fix up the test index. Now that it's using the API key, the tests don't have access to all that data, so we had to add an API key. We had to use a fixture there. And then we have the new gateway, and we're passing in that publishable key, which is, at the moment, just a property that goes to the database and fetches the publishable key based on the Stripe live mode. We've got our new URL. We made this HTML5 compatible by adding the doc type, and then we added the block for scripts. We identified our button so that when we click it, although we didn't really click it, that's we got to check that later. And then we've actually implemented our scripts block, which is a chunk of JavaScript's code that we stole from this, from Homeschool. We have this note in our to-do list of get the monthly price. So this thing that isn't filled in right now, we're going to get that later. And then all of this code, I think, well, we'll need to use this later when we're going to pass in the price ID. That price ID is what we're going to use to pass to create a valid session. So that'll be necessary later. And then once we actually call this stuff and get the data back from the session, this right here, this one line, this is the payoff. We do everything right and we get an actual session ID. Stripe's going to redirect us to the right page, but we don't have a setup yet right now. So right now, if anything, it's going to redirect us to the Homeschool page, test page. But that's what would have happened. All right, so that's all the code changes for this evening. Let's commit this stuff. Oh, we got a new pre-commit check we need to run through. Let's let it run, see what it says. And okay. Fine. So there's one thing we have to fix with rough. So rough is behaving like bandit right here. That's the S106. Is a bandit check. Bandit is a security testing tool. We need to tell it to ignore that stuff. So Python rough ignore line. So we need to add no QA with a specific check. And then where'd it go? Gateway. So we'll say no QA. Also, it's disappointing too that the linter did not publish that. So I clearly don't have a linter hooked up for rough, sorry. Can we leave a note here? This is stored in the database and is not. This is stored in. This is stored. This is stored safely in the database. Should hopefully be enough. Oh, come on. What line are you complaining on? You're complaining about line 12? Really? Line 12? What if I put it here? Oh, phooey. One of these lines will be the right place to attach this thing. I was complaining about 12, right? So, is that the one? Seems like a really odd placement. All right, I'm going to try and put it on all of the lines and see. Okay, hold on. It could be like it doesn't like the comment. I'm moving the comment up above so we have some signal, and then we're going to add the no QA in a bunch of lines. So right now, if I try and run it, it's going to say like, hey, there's a secret, and it's complaining. Which one's is it? There's a 12 and a 9, and which one is which? I would think 9 is for the property, 12 is for this. So if I put no QA here, are you going to be okay with that spot? No. About this one, or this one? Surely one of those. Well, that stinks. Maybe it was line 9. Maybe it's like looking at the property level. I'm just going to cover them all. Okay. Help. I want to figure out which. Oh, I'm being dumb. I can't read very well, apparently. It's in the test view. So none of this was a problem at all, because it was reading an attribute. It didn't care about any of this stuff. So this code was fine. It's complaining about the core tests. Line 9. Okay. Yeah. Be quiet. No QA S 106. This is test data. All right, there we go. So let's say, what do we primarily do? I guess we primarily added Stripe code and publishable key. This is for number 7. I'll go ahead and push that up. All right, that leaves us with, what does this leave us with? We still have a lot to do. We have more of the gateway to do, all these pieces to wire together, things to test. I am not going to be here next week. I will be out of town traveling, so I'll be unavailable to be there. And then the following week, I think I'll be around for another streaming session. We'll be able to pick up back up on this. Thank you for joining in this evening. I appreciate the questions, and hope you all have a good one. Take care.